My name is Claire, I am 35 years old, and I am an architect in Marseille, a city that blends history and modernity, where every corner tells a different story. I married Pierre 7 years ago. Pierre is a doctor, a dedicated and loving man with whom I have shared many happy moments. However, our life gradually sank into a monotonous and predictable routine. Our days are filled with work, family meals, and evenings in front of the television. The spontaneous laughter and moments of passion have given way to a dull tranquility. Architecture has always been my passion, but recently I felt an emptiness, an absence of the spark that once animated my daily life. It was in this state of mind that I received an invitation to a film festival in Marseille where an old love, Vincent, was presenting his latest film. Vincent and I had an intense and passionate relationship years ago. He, a talented director, and I, a young aspiring architect, shared moments of pure magic, but our paths separated when our careers took different directions. The film festival took place in a beautiful setting with sparkling lights and red carpets everywhere. Entering the projection room, my heart was pounding. Seeing Vincent standing in front of the screen, receiving applause for his work, awakened buried memories. After the screening, I walked toward him, my heart racing. "Claire," Vincent exclaimed when he saw me. "I can't believe it, it's been years." We exchanged smiles and pleasantries, but the electricity in the air was palpable. We decided to leave the festival's hustle and bustle and walk along the old port. The conversation was fluid, natural, as if time had never passed. We talked about our lives, our careers, and inevitably, the memories of our shared past. Looking at Vincent, I felt alive again. His sparkling eyes, his crooked smile, his passionate way of talking about his work. All of this contrasted so much with the routine of my current life. Pierre had become predictable, each day a repetition of the previous one, and I felt like I was suffocating in this monotony. Vincent invited me to dinner, and I couldn't refuse. The evening took place in a small, intimate restaurant hidden from prying eyes. We talked, laughed, and little by little, the physical distance between us diminished. After dinner, he suggested continuing the evening at his hotel. I hesitated, but the temptation was too strong. We arrived at the hotel, a chic and discreet establishment. Crossing the threshold of the room, I felt a surge of adrenaline. We kissed with a rekindled passion and spent the night together. It was as if the years had vanished, and we were once again those carefree young lovers. The next morning, as we left the hotel, a flash blinded us. A paparazzo had captured our moment of intimacy. I tried to hide my face, but it was too late. The consequences of that night would soon turn my life upside down in an unpredictable way. Back home, I tried to resume my normal life with Pierre, but something had changed. I was haunted by that night, torn between guilt and the desire to relive that passion. Pierre suspected nothing, and I continued to play the role of the perfect wife. A few days later, while flipping through a magazine, I came across a photo of Vincent and me leaving the hotel. My heart stopped. The caption under the photo insinuated an affair. I knew it was only a matter of time before Pierre discovered the truth. My world was about to collapse. The photo of Vincent and me in that tabloid triggered a shockwave in my life. Every moment I spent with Pierre was tinged with guilt and fear of him discovering the truth. But more than that, that encounter with Vincent had reignited a flame I thought had long been extinguished. I felt desired and alive again. Vincent and I continued to see each other in secret. Each meeting was an explosion of passion and emotion. We found excuses to slip away from everyday life, whether during my lunch breaks or his business trips. Each of our escapades was riskier than the last, but the adrenaline that accompanied these forbidden moments made everything even more intense. "I can't keep doing this," Vincent confided one evening. "I want more than stolen moments. I want us to be together, really." His words resonated with me. The idea of leaving everything for Vincent seemed both terrifying and appealing. The routine with Pierre had become unbearable, but did I really have the courage to abandon everything? The pressure increased every day. At work, I became more and more distracted, and my colleagues noticed my strange behavior. At home, Pierre began to ask questions about my frequent absences. Each lie I told him made me feel even more guilty. One evening, as I came home late after a meeting with Vincent, Pierre was waiting for me in the living room. His face was serious, and he held the magazine with the compromising photo. "Claire, we need to talk," he said in a broken voice. I felt my heart stop. The moment I had dreaded had finally arrived. Pierre showed me the photo, and I saw the pain in his eyes. I tried to find excuses, but the words failed me. "Is it true?" he simply asked. I lowered my head, unable to lie any longer. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I nodded. "How could you do this to me?" "To us?" he asked, his voice trembling with anger and sadness. The following days were hell. Pierre and I avoided talking to each other, each trying to understand how our marriage had come to this. Friends and family began to ask questions, further fueling the tension. I found myself torn between my love for Pierre, who had been my rock for so many years, and the consuming passion I felt for Vincent. One evening, while walking alone through the streets of Marseille, I received a call from Vincent. He was in town and wanted to see me. Despite the emotional storm I was in, I couldn't resist the idea of seeing him again. We met in a small discreet cafe. Vincent was worried, knowing that the situation was becoming increasingly complicated. He took my hand across the table. "Claire, we need to make a decision. I can't keep living like this, and neither can you," he said softly. I knew he was right, but the idea of leaving Pierre paralyzed me. How could I choose between two men I loved in such different ways? The situation became unbearable. Pierre and I were stuck in a silent and painful coexistence, while my meetings with Vincent were filled with a growing sense of guilt. Every look from Pierre, every question from my loved ones, felt like daggers in my heart. One day, while at the office, I received a call from my boss. Entering his office, I saw a copy of the same magazine spread out on his desk. "Claire, does this concern you?" he asked, pointing to the photo of Vincent and me. "We have a reputation to maintain, and this kind of scandal can harm us." I tried to explain that it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, but he seemed unconvinced. My position, my career, everything I had built was in jeopardy because of this affair. Leaving his office, I felt the weight of my choices grow even heavier on my shoulders. Vincent's calls became increasingly insistent. He wanted me to make a decision, to leave Pierre so we could live our love openly. But the fear of losing everything, the security of my current life, kept me from taking that step. One night, unable to sleep, I went to the living room and found Pierre sitting, staring at a photo of us on our wedding day. He looked up at me, tears in his eyes. "Claire, what are we going to do?" he murmured. It was the final blow. I realized that my indecision was only prolonging everyone's suffering. I had to make a decision for Pierre, for Vincent, but most importantly, for myself. The next day, I met Vincent in a park. He was nervous, pacing as he waited for me. When I approached, he turned to me, hope shining in his eyes. "So, have you made your decision?" he asked. I took a deep breath. My heart ached at what I was about to say. "Vincent, I love you, but I can't abandon everything. Not like this. Pierre doesn't deserve this, and I have to face my responsibilities," I said, holding back my tears. Disappointment filled his face. He nodded, reluctantly accepting my decision. "I understand, Claire. It's just so hard to let you go," he said softly. We kissed one last time, a kiss filled with sadness and regrets. Then he walked away, leaving me alone in the park, my heart heavy but resolved to face the consequences of my actions. Returning home, I found Pierre in the garden, trying to find some peace in nature. I sat next to him, and we remained silent for a moment. "I'm sorry, Pierre. I don't know how we got here, but I want to try to fix things," I finally said. He nodded, but I could see the pain in his eyes. The road to reconciliation would be long and difficult, but I knew I had to do everything in my power to get there. The weeks that followed were the most difficult of my life. Pierre and I were like strangers living under the same roof, trying to piece together the fragments of our broken marriage. The tension was palpable, and every conversation felt like a tightrope walk. Vincent had left town for a new project, and although our separation was heartbreaking, it was necessary. I had to focus on my relationship with Pierre and try to regain his trust. Yet the shadow of my infidelity hung over us, making every interaction heavy with unspoken words and resentments. One evening, while Pierre was on duty at the hospital, I received a call from Vincent. He was at the airport, ready to leave for a filming abroad, and he wanted to say goodbye. His voice was filled with sadness and resignation. "Claire, I just wanted to tell you that I will always love you. Take care of yourself," he said before hanging up. It felt like a final farewell, and I felt a part of me break. But I had to move forward for Pierre, for our marriage, and for myself. The months passed, and slowly, Pierre and I began to relearn how to know each other. We decided to go to couples therapy, a difficult but necessary step to understand the deep causes of our estrangement. The sessions were often painful, confronting our fears, anger, and disappointments. But they also allowed us to regain some form of communication, to relearn how to speak honestly to each other. One day, after a particularly trying session, Pierre took my hand as we left the therapist's office. "I want us to make it, Claire. I really want us to make it," he said with a sincerity that deeply touched me. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. We decided to take a vacation away from everything to try to rebuild our relationship. We chose a small house by the sea, isolated, where we could focus on each other without outside distractions. Those vacations were a turning point. Away from the pressures of our daily lives, we rediscovered simple pleasures: walks on the beach, dinners under the stars, late-night conversations. Little by little, the complicity and tenderness began to resurface. However, reconciliation was not without obstacles. Sometimes a word, a look, was enough to revive the pain of betrayal. But we were determined to move forward, not to let the past define our future. Upon our return, we established new habits to nurture our relationship: regular outings, romantic weekends, and above all, open and honest communication. Pierre agreed to work less, and I did the same, so we could spend more time together. One evening, while we were having dinner at home, Pierre looked at me with a new intensity. "Claire, I know everything isn't perfect yet, but I believe in us. I believe we can be happy together," he said softly. I felt tears well up, but this time they were tears of gratitude and hope. We had been through hell, but we were still there, together, ready to rebuild what we had almost lost. The months following our vacation were a period of rebirth for our couple. The road had been long and strewn with obstacles, but each small victory strengthened our determination to rebuild our relationship. Couples therapy continued to play a crucial role, helping us navigate through painful memories and build a more peaceful future. Vincent, meanwhile, remained a poignant memory in a corner of my mind. I knew he had found success with his new film, and although I no longer had direct news from him, I sincerely wished him happiness. Our affair, as devastating as it was, had allowed me to reevaluate my life and understand what was truly important to me. One evening, while we were lying side by side, Pierre took my hand. "You know, Claire, I've thought a lot about all this. And I think this ordeal, as difficult as it was, has allowed us to become stronger. We've learned not to take our relationship for granted," he said softly. His words resonated within me. He was right. The crisis we had gone through had broken the monotony that had settled in our lives. It had forced us to face our fears, insecurities, and to rediscover the passion we had lost along the way. Gradually, we began to make new plans together. We considered renovating our house, adopting a dog, and even traveling abroad. Each project, each shared dream, was another step towards complete reconciliation. One morning, while flipping through a photo album, I came across images of our wedding. The smiles, the loving glances, all reminded me of why I had chosen Pierre. I turned to him, sitting at the kitchen table, and felt overwhelmed by a wave of love and gratitude. "Pierre, thank you for believing in us. Thank you for giving me a second chance," I said, approaching him. He looked up at me, and I saw that spark of determination I had missed so much. He took me in his arms, and we stayed like that, savoring that moment of regained peace. Life was not perfect, and it never would be. But we had learned to appreciate every moment, to communicate openly, and to never let routine stifle our love. Trust was slowly being rebuilt, and with it, our happiness. One day, while walking along the old port, Pierre stopped and looked at me intensely. "Claire, I love you. Despite everything that has happened, I have never stopped loving you," he said with a sincerity that deeply touched me. I felt tears well up, but this time they were tears of happiness. We had survived the storm, and we were stronger, more united than ever. Reconciliation had not been easy, but it had strengthened the foundations of our relationship, allowing us to dream together again. As we watched the sun set over Marseille, I realized how lucky I was. Life had its ups and downs, but what truly mattered was love, understanding, and the willingness to fight for what is important. Pierre and I had found a new balance, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. We continued our walk hand in hand, ready to face the future together, no matter what challenges lay ahead. For now, we knew that our love could survive anything.